Hey, so let's talk a little bit about automation and some of the mistakes we make. I keep seeing it so frequently that we got to talk about it, right? So I haven't rehearsed this at all. So this is just going to be you and I discussing my opinion on automation, what level we should be applying it at, and the common mistakes we make because we're humans and we think like humans rather than thinking like computers. So let's talk about our traditional system, right? So we're used to thinking about things with UIs, right? So they've got text on them and buttons and fields and forms and all sorts of things. And that's the way we interact with our systems as people. When we look at these systems, we think about them that way. So I go to this site, I fill in these forms, I click this button, something magically happens, another thing comes up with a big check mark that says, yeah, you did it, or maybe the next steps. And so we think about systems from the way they present themselves to us through their front ends or their user interfaces. And this is true when we look at processes as well. So we think about processes as, so I've got a person here, and right now with our manual process, they fill out this Word document, and then they email that thing on over to a team, and then the team takes a look at it, and then they turn it into a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet then gets emailed off to a couple of different people, and they approve it. And then that gets uploaded into SharePoint, right? So we think about our processes in the way that humans are interacting and the things that they exchange. So when we go to automate, some stuff happens. We have lots of different things we're trying to automate. We may be trying to automate testing and making sure that we have a way of repeatably ensuring quality. We might be trying to automate existing manual processes, trying to digitize them, be more effective and efficient and more agile and maintainable. Regardless of what we're trying to automate, the most common mistake I see is to take this, and now, because we're going to automate it, we replace this with, now we're going to have a little computer who's going to now take a Word document that people create, and then it's going to use, let's say, SMTP to email it over, and then turn it into, now a computer is going to turn it into a spreadsheet. We're going to make an Excel spreadsheet, like let's say using Poi. I'm a Java developer, so we're going to automate creating a spreadsheet, and then we're going to use SMTP again to email it off to these inboxes or Jira boards. We're going to automatically create Jiras, and then those people at the end are going to upload it, maybe still into SharePoint, or maybe we're going to put it in a database or something to store it. What we do is we take the existing human process and we turn it into now a computer-based process that still has more or less all the same steps, more or less all the same artifacts, etc. We do that same thing up here. So we've got this beautiful system, this lovely UI. How we used to test it is, we'd have a human person that would actually, whoops, sorry, wrong color. We would have a human person go in and they would click these buttons, right? And then they would validate that, yes, the results came back as I expected them. And they might upload those results in something like ALM and say, hey, I validated personally. Here's some screenshots that show it following a script. So then when we go to automate this, what we do is we make a little computer. We might call his name Selenium. So here's little Mr. Selenium computer. He's going to go in, he'll pull up this website now, he'll enter in all of the data, and then at the end of this, we'll have another little Selenium computer, and she'll go over here and she'll check and see, did that result thing come up? Or we might record this in something like ALM provides some of that stuff, so HP has some tools that kind of end up replaying behavior. And there's some code here, and there's some variables for what you can fill in, so you can run this over and over again. But it's still very human-centric. Well, here's the problem. Humans are slow, and the way that we interact with systems and tools is normally the least efficient way possible because of the way that we actually absorb information and the ways that we think about information. If we automate this way, we are pretty well guaranteed to build brittle automation. So what do I mean by brittle automation? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so let's assume we've got our beautiful system up there, and we've got this automation that's going to actually automate tests, and it's going to go in and pull this up and hit the URL and enter fields and hit click. Well, let's say it's been a couple years, and now all of a sudden know what's really popular is filling everything out on these little tiny devices in our pockets. So we don't have this UI. UI is far less important now. Now we've got something that kind of looks like this, and it has autocomplete on most of this stuff. So that's not, you're not even typing it in. It's coming based on your profile. So we have passwordless tokenized login. It's going to pre-populate all of that. The images are smaller, less important. We don't have submit buttons anymore now. Let's say it's all gesture controlled. So you're actually just going to swipe to the right. So actually you just swipe it when you're ready to go to the next page. This is a completely different UI. This bot over here can't talk to that, has no idea how to test that. What's interesting is behind these two here is what's often called an API. And the API is kind of like the guts of our system. This is where all of this stuff lived, like business rules, how things should be processed. This is all the back end of everything that we're doing. Ideally, if you've designed your system well, this API has ports that, regardless of the type of UI that you're interacting with, same functionality, exact same behavior, same rules, same everything. They may interact with it differently, but really it's the same thing. And this would be true of anything. So like if you had, a robot coming in and requesting stuff, let's say you had a messaging system here, maybe it's dropping stuff on a queue or making web service calls, whatever it is, everything comes through here. This is the stable thing. These things are very brittle. And brittle means they change frequently, they can break easily because of that. Well, I'm an OO developer, and there's a rule in object-oriented development, which is if you're going to couple, you want to avoid it if you can. If you're going to couple to stability, couple to things that will not change. If we are building automation, automated tests, and we'll talk about processes in a second, we want to build them in such a way that they very rarely need to change. That if we're changing them, it's because we've decided to do so purposefully. They're not just breaking because a style changed or a step changed or a person moved addresses. We want them to be stable, repeatable, and we want to have clarity on if they're broken, why they're broken, and we want to be able to fix them and change them very easily. By testing through these things here as our primary test method, we've guaranteed that our tests are brittle. They will change every time the UI changes. And we're not sure if they failed because the UI is different, or if they failed because the meat of our system where behavior lives is different. That's dangerous. Now, one of the problems is, well, we used to test using human people over here. So when we just had that system, we had humans doing it. Humans can't test through an API. I guess you could if you really wanted to manually hit a REST service and look at the results, but I'd be shocked to find a team if they had manual testing that was doing it that way. So all of our manual testing was through the UI because that was actually easier for a human. You test everything end to end, you do it once you're done. It's not easier for a computer. It's actually easier for a computer to test here. And there's a ton of benefits to doing that. If the bulk, and I dare say from your functional testing or your acceptance testing, something like 98% of your testing should be there. That means you need to write it in a way that computers understand, not just humans. There's still plenty of space and room to test through the UI, to do end-to-end testing, to use Selenium for great things like testing browser cross-compatibility. It's good stuff. I love Selenium. But we need to think like computers when we test, not redo what humans did. And we see this not just with testing up here, but also with process automation. So when we go to automate processes, we've included all of these queues, all of these steps and handoffs. Why did the steps and handoffs and queues exist to begin with? Well, they tend to exist because of organizational separation, communication delays, humans that have separate skills or responsibilities. Guess who doesn't care about that? This computer. So if we're going to automate a process, the best way of automating it is to think about the beginning state here, the end state here, and what needs to happen between the two, and figure out the shortest path from A to B. And that shortest path may be that you don't need to do this at all. It's entirely possible the process shouldn't even exist. The shortest path may be that you have just a simple form that immediately is auto-processed and then loaded into a database. That may be enough. You may not even need those steps. You definitely don't need to create a spreadsheet or a Word document. However, this happens a lot. in all of these places because we tend to think about automation as taking existing and putting computers around it, when really we need to think about automation as taking the problem we're solving and think about it like a computer. What's the best way of solving this with a robot rather than with a human? So hopefully it's at least sparks some ideas. We can talk about that. I'm really passionate about, especially with BDD, starting here and then getting there when you're ready rather than starting here. And I know that's often controversial, so I'm eager to hear what you think and if you have a different point of view. All right.